Jason Spezza hangs up the skates and joins the Maple Leafs front office. Dave and I will look back on his career and debate is he Hall of Fame worthy? Plus, Canada settling for silver at the Hockey World Championships, the Avalanche booking their ticket to the Western Conference Final, and Canes and Rangers Game 7 going down tonight. Massive weekend around the hockey world. We'll get into all of this and more on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother from TSN's Overdrive and 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts if you haven't yet. You can also now catch us up on YouTube. Locked On Leafs on YouTube is where you can find that. And still on our road to 1,000 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen. We have surpassed the 850, maybe the 860 mark. I think we're in the 860s. So we're getting closer and closer, inching to that 1,000 goal that we have. And once we get there, we're giving away a jersey. So the quicker you sub up, the quicker you're eligible, and we can get that jersey and give it away to one of you loyal listeners. All right, Dave, let's get right into it. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily news I didn't expect. Jason Spezza deciding to retire after 19 seasons, years old. He's decided to call it quits, hanging it up. I mean, did this catch you by surprise at all? I kind of thought that when we didn't see a contract extension come through, basically around the exact same time as Mark Giordano's came through, I thought, that's probably because Spezza's not going to be returning as a player. But he is going to be returning and sticking around the team as a front office member, which is pretty cool. But what were your initial thoughts when you saw the news trickle across your screen this morning?
Oh, definitely surprise. I mean, you got a feeling when you listen to his final press conference of the season, at the end of the season press conference, that this was a player that was kind of in realization that this likely might have been the end. But obviously we've come to kind of understand the last few years that Spezza had been given every opportunity to decide whether he wants to continue his career or hang it up. And this year kind of felt a little bit different. And just basically, obviously, we know he didn't play as much, this year as in past years. Still was able to put up some decent numbers, but obviously his role was always going to be the same. And, it just comes to a point where he ultimately decided it was time. That's kind of where I get the sense of that. And it's disappointing because we know what he was trying to work for the last 3 seasons in Toronto. Yeah. It was always about that Stanley Cup. And it's just disappointing that he never got that as a player. And that's probably my biggest reaction was just, it's just disappointment to know that he pretty much decided, as a player, I've done everything I can to try to win that cup, and I just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, 1,248 games in the regular season is the final tally. 995 points, finishes 5 shy of 1,000. That's the most gutting part about it, because if he wouldn't have, if he would have been able to play like a full season this year, full 82, he absolutely would have surpassed that number, but spent a lot of time up in the press box this season, and also went on a few cold spells where he just went pointless in, double-digit games in a row. And I'm sure, if he could have had a couple of points here and there, he would have got to 1,000. But that's always going to sting, just being so close to that milestone, but not being able to get there. That was the only thing that I thought perhaps he does come back just to reach that milestone. Obviously, he would stick it out for the whole season, but it's like, give me one more year. Let me get to 1,000. We could try and win a championship next year as well, but I just want to hit that milestone. And obviously, that's not going to be the case. But when it comes to getting the Stanley Cup, the fact that he's returning as a front office member, he still could have a chance to get a Stanley Cup for the city of Toronto. And I would be surprised because they're allowed, like X amount of names that they can actually carve into the cup. Like, I wonder if they would choose Spezza as one of the guys that they carve in, despite, if if they win a Stanley Cup, obviously. I'm pulling the cart ahead of the horse here a little bit, but just to get his name on the cup, just because he's so well respected in that organization. But let's just talk a little bit about his career really quickly. So, as I said, 19 points, 995, or 19 seasons, 995 points through 1,248 games. Represented Canada numerous occasions. 3 times he represented them at the World Junior Championships. Came away with 2 bronze and a silver in 2000, 2001, and 2002. So his pre-draft year, his draft year, and this D+1, he took part in 3 separate World Junior Championships. I didn't even realize that until I was looking at it. Won gold in the Spangler Cup in 2012. Looks like that would have been the
Lockout shortened
season, yeah, with Davos. Did that there. And then the World Championships, won a gold medal in 2015. Also won 2 silvers in 2009 and 2008. So that's what he was able to do internationally. Just the one time he made it to the Stanley Cup final, that was with the Ottawa Senators in 2007. We all know how that played out. They did not end up winning it. Jason Spezza never returned back to the promised land. Never got back to that Stanley Cup final. 15 years later at this point. So clearly, it's unfortunate for such a great career to end. But ultimately, hats off to Jason Spezza on a marvelous career. Let's give him a little clap, some stick taps, and all that for Spezza. I guess the next question that I want to ask you about it is: do you believe that Jason Spezza is Hall of Fame bound, Dave?
This is a tough one. He's a very decorated player. You just listed off all the accomplishments. I even see them in front of me here too. Unfortunately, there's going to be those who are going to bring up the no Stanley Cups. I hate that criteria because there's only one Stanley Cup, and it's so hard to win for a lot of players. Like, are we saying Pat Maroon is more deserving because he's won X amount of Stanley Cups?
Right.
I think we can all know who is a closer to a Hall of Fame player. But like, for Jason Spezza to be considered a Hall of Famer, that's got to be like way down the list. Like, I've seen a lot of players who have made it or struggled to get to the Hall of Fame, and a lot of them I think maybe a little bit more deserving than Jason Spezza. He's had some great seasons. He's been on some really good Senators teams. I just think he might fall short on a lot of categories of that. A lot of the boxes that need to be ticked. Maybe that way down the road, it could be considered. He can get there in a different way. That's all I'm going to say. He doesn't have to get in as a player.
Yeah, he could go the builder route and get in there as a builder or a coach, I suppose. That's way, way down the way.
Exactly.
But you know what? I think I agree with you, Dave. As much as I love Jason Spezza and what he did for the game, like 19 years, a lot of time spent playing hockey, giving us enjoyment, being able to watch him. I know a lot of those were against the Ottawa, back when he was with Ottawa, and he was kind of enemy number one, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I don't think you could find a single person in hockey who doesn't like Jason Spezza, who just loved him as a person, a player, and we'll wish him nothing but the success going forward. But ultimately, he was an all-star just one time after age 24. So his last, I guess, 14 years in the NHL, just one all-star appearance, and that was in 2011, 2012. Never made an all-star appearance after the 2012 lockout. Not a single all-star appearance, interestingly enough. Didn't make one when he was in Dallas, and obviously not here in Toronto. So I don't know if the longevity was there. He had a couple of seasons, like you said, that were just spectacular. I mean, you look at his 05-06 year, 22 years old, 90 points in 68 games. That was a big year. I recall, I think that was Crosby's rookie year where Jumbo had like 120 points
Yeah.
to lead all players. But still, 90 points in 68 games is just maddening. And then followed it up with 87, 92, 73. Like that was his right through his prime, 23 through 25
Yeah.
was the best hockey that guy played in his career. And that was played with, Danny Heatley, that was played with Marty Havlat, with Daniel Alfredson. Like that's when the Ottawa Senators were at their best. And they made that run to the Cup final, the following year in 06 and 07. And he ended up with 87 points in 67 games that year. It was spectacular. But ultimately, I don't know if he had enough big time years to warrant actually being a Hall of Famer. I mean, he was a point per game player in his first 11 years in Ottawa and then really fell off after that. I don't see it. Unfortunately, I just don't see the Hall of Fame in his future as a player. It could come in a different way, like you said. But as a player, I don't think there was enough success. There's not any individual awards that he won. Statistic individual awards, that is. So it's like a couple of all-star appearances, 0 Stanley Cups. There's just not a whole lot. There's a couple of international, golds that he won. But ultimately, I don't think there's enough there to warrant a Hall of Fame bid, despite being an incredible player for so many years in the National Hockey League. But you got to be better than elite. You got to be a Hall of Famer. You got to be special to make it in there sometimes. And I think he's just a tier below that.
Yeah, I think his years in Dallas, there might be some regret there on the decision, maybe on his part to go off to Dallas and all those things, because he kind of went on a bit of a decline. He had a couple of okay seasons there, not to what he had in his time in Ottawa. So I wonder if that kind of took him out of his rhythm in a way. Yeah, I think that's the big part there, right? He was a good player, but he never really was, I would say in that draft class that he was in, which, God, if you think back to it, 2001, he's probably the second best player in that draft class behind Ilya Kovalchuk. Like
That makes
Kovalchuk,
sense because that's who went first and second.
yeah, right? But I mean, like he had the most points from that draft class, but he also did it in more games than Kovalchuk, right? So I just think, yeah, he was among the best player. He was the second. I'm gonna go with the second best player in the draft class.
You're crapping on my guy, Kyle Wellwood, who was in that draft class,
Oh, man.
5th rounder. Well, 134th pick by the Maple Leafs in that draft.
Very underrated pick by the Leafs, I will say.
Yeah, actually, I didn't realize that he was like that late of a pick. 134 turned out to 400, almost 500 games in the NHL, over 230 points. Yeah, it wasn't bad. Wasn't bad, but certainly no Jason Spezza, who came 5 shy of 1,000. You're correct.
So yeah, I think that as a player, Jason Spezza, you get to appreciate him more when you get to learn more about him. Like obviously, as a Leafs fan, you're not really looking to praise Jason Spezza, especially during his time in Ottawa. But I have watched some like highlight reel stuff when he was in
Oh,
Ottawa.
yeah.
That goal against Jose Theodore, I want to say it was in that 06 year or rough around that time, where he just deked around. I can't remember who the Canadiens defenseman was, and just roofs it on Theodore. Like he had moments like that where you're just like, this guy is special. I remember watching those, watching when he was in Mississauga. Like this is like going way, way back in the well. Like he was touted as such a great player, and he lived up to those expectations. There were some high expectations when he was with the Ice Dogs, who were not a very good team, but he was still a very good player on that team. So
Yeah, I mean, you become the number 2 overall pick in the NHL draft. there's going to be high expectations, absolutely. And yeah, I think he checked the boxes there. I think Ottawa, at the end of the day, would be pretty happy with the
Yeah.
pick and the way that that turned out. A solid 11-year run with the Ottawa Senators, multiple playoff appearances. They ended up going to a Cup final, and he was a point per game player actually. In when he was in Ottawa, he was point per game player, 687 points in 686 games in the regular season with the Ottawa Senators. So I think the Sens are definitely happy and would agree with you that they that they made the right bet. They made the right bet taking him second overall in the draft. And speaking of bets, our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest odds, news, and sport developments, including this year's basketball playoff, the Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball, and even next season's NFL futures. Bet Online is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. Got Dave Morassutti with me. We're your hosts here at Locked On Leafs. Jason Spezza announces that he's stepping away from the game on the ice, but will remain with the Maple Leafs off the ice as he will join the front office in some capacity. Now, full transparency to all the listeners and viewers here. I have not, to this point, I had an insanely busy day, crazy busy day. I have not to this point, I will tomorrow, had a chance to actually listen to the whole half-hour press conference with Jason Spezza and Kyle Dubas. But Dave, and this is why I'm so glad that I have a co-host who is better than I apparently, did carve out that amount of time. So Dave, I wanted the people to get a chance to understand kind of where Jason Spezza was coming from today in that press conference, and maybe a little bit of Kyle Dubas. What were your main takeaways from what those guys had to say today?
I think for Spezza, it was there was some doubt about whether he made the right decision. Um, it's so hard when you have such a passion for the game to just hang him up. You can tell this was something that was a tough decision for Spezza, and there'll always be did he do enough to win a cup? He always said that, but I think the quote that stuck out to me about whether or not he should have stuck around for another season and give that one last try to win a cup. I'm gonna quote from Luke Fox's story. He's like, "I'm a pretty realistic guy. I think, as time went on, I knew that I wasn't going to do this forever. I also want to leave the team in a good spot. I know you don't want to overstay your welcome as a player either. I think there's a lot of respect that people have for me. You don't want to use that and take advantage of the situation." I think that last line really that's a bit of respect both ways, right? We know how much the Leafs respected what Jason Spezza brought, and there's a bit of respect on Jason Spezza's part in saying, you know,
I might be
my,
holding you back at
I'm
some point
yeah,
here.
right. He basically is saying, I'm going to take the least amount of money I could take. Just give me a chance to try to win that cup. But then, it just gets to the point where it's like, look, you can also use that money and get a player maybe that's a little more, that can give a little bit more than I can give. And I think the important thing here and I'm going to quote another thing from Luke Fox's story, because I think the part of it is, yes, his career as a player is over, but his hockey career is not.
Right.
I think this is where Kyle Dubas's part really comes in, is that he saw firsthand how Spezza not only worked with the Leafs and those on the Leafs, but those in other parts of the organization. He made time for guys in the ECHL. He made time for guys on like two-way contracts in the AHL. Like,
That's
this
awesome.
is a player that, it wasn't his role really to do all that, but he did it because that's how much he cared. And I don't think it comes as a coincidence that they made some front office changes, and then all of a sudden there's a role there for Jason Spezza, right?
That's a good
Um,
point. I didn't think about that. I did
right.
not put two and two together. Now I don't. Yeah, that could be the case. Oh, is that what did they say exactly what his role is going to be,
So
or was
he's
it a
like
little
an
vague?
assistant to Kyle Dubas. So he
Oh, okay. So the classic assistant to the manager.
So
Yeah.
actually, if you get a chance, Jonas Siegel for The Athletic wrote a great piece about why Jason Spezza was built for a front office role, and like he quotes a lot of guys who Spezza's come across throughout his NHL career, and every guy says like this is a guy that can scout for you. This is a guy who can
Yeah.
help build a team, and I think you're going to see Spezza's not going to do just one thing. I think his and ears are going to be on everything and really I hear Spezza talk, and how many times has he gone up? Have we heard that Spezza's gone up during an intermission, said the things that the Leafs needed to hear, and they come back and they either win the game or they turn their game around. I think Spezza, his hockey mind, his hockey IQ is so valuable that I think the Leafs. It's almost like it was a match made in heaven for this front office to have a guy like this who understands the game. Like there's guys who he's got that rare ability thing, and that's what I read. That's the sense I got from reading this piece from Jonas. But I think for Kyle Dubas, there's a lot of respect there. I think the respect of seeing how Spezza played on the ice, but then seeing how it translated to the guys that he was a teammate with. I think it's an easier relationship for Kyle Dubas to keep around. I think you're gonna hopefully see it translate to maybe a little bit more success because now Spezza has seen it as a player. He knows what this team needs, and he can kind of put those 2 cents in as a player in a better position to help this team move forward.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, and I mean, I think that guy's gonna do an amazing job. He's such an incredible hockey mind. The guy lives, breathes hockey. Like that's all he's done his entire life. You ever listen to an interview? I mean, that guy. There's no bigger like stick guy than Jason Spezza. Like it's right down to the minute details of how much that guy cares and just loves hockey. So it totally makes sense, and it was inevitable that eventually he would find himself in a front office. I don't think he was ever going to leave the game of hockey. So for him to stick around in his hometown, I think that he's always kind of known this is where I want it to end, and I think that it's admirable. And I was listening to I can't remember what show it was, but I was listening to Frank Corrado on TSN 1050, and they were talking about how Mark Giordano he signed a 2-year deal, and Frankie said something really interesting, and he said, "Well, it could also be a something that he's doing like in the future, right? He signs that 2-year deal, and it could also kind of help him." For down the road, if he wanted like it gives him a couple more years to get to know the entire organization so that life after hockey he's got more tentacles on it within that organization, and it'd be easier for him to kind of do exactly what Jason Spezza is doing, I suppose. So you think back to Spezza, and he just kept taking those 800,000, 800,000, 800,000 deals over the last couple of years. And that's kind of what he did, right? He got to know everybody within the organization. He rubbed off on the guys he needed to, and I think now at this point, you look at, Matthews and Marner. I don't know if they need like an old gray beard anymore to motivate these guys. I think that they're at the point where their maturity level has reached, a point where they should be able to motivate themselves. I know there was times this year where Spezza was the guy who stood up and said, "Hey, let's get it going." But I think, going into next year, it's like that's their team. They got to do this. They're 25, 26 years old, 24, you know what I mean? Like they're in their mid 20s. It's time for them. They don't need that fourth line gray beard anymore. The Marlowe, the Thornton, the Spezza, I guess Simmons will still be under contract. Gio, I guess, could take over some of that. But I think that that's another piece of it where it's okay, the leadership that you provide in the room, there's other guys who can also take over. And the elevation of a Matthews and Marner, maybe you don't quite need that as much from Jason Spezza. So now is just a perfect time to elevate him up into a front office role. And hopefully it turns into a long, prosperous career. We see so many guys who had terrific NHL careers who have turned out to be amazing GMs. Like look at what's going on right now. You got Steve Yzerman, who basically built the Tampa Bay Lightning, who's now in Detroit, but he built that squad. Everybody knows that. Joe Sakic, what he's been able to do. Like Bergevin, and he was able to build a Stanley Cup competing team. That whatever, he's gone now, but
Rob
right,
Blake is doing it in LA.
Rob Blake in LA. Like there's so many guys who are just learning that to become that, and there's so many guys who are doing this. They're sticking around with the organization in which they kind of finished their career with, or that the organization that meant most of their career, and they're learning as like the assistant to the regional manager. That Dwight, like what I mean. What's that show called? The Office.
Office.
The Office. Bit of a joke there, but you have like assistant to the general manager, and hopefully he absorbs everything like a sponge, and wouldn't be shocked one day to see general manager Jason Spezza, whether it's for the Maple Leafs or another team. I don't know, but at some point I could see this guy wanting to be potentially a GM or a head scout, something with an organization. So good luck to Jason. Honestly, I wish you nothing but success, and appreciate the couple of years of service he gave to the Maple Leafs first and foremost, but also I respect and appreciate the years prior in Ottawa and Dallas. Definitely a lot of fond memories of watching Spezza play hockey. That is for sure. All right. Why don't we take one more quick break? When we get back, let's talk a little bit about the Team Canada at the World Hockey Championships, losing in the final to Finland, going home with silver. Not what we all wanted to see, but we'll talk a little bit about that and what's going on in the Stanley Cup Finals. It was a busy weekend, and there's a Game 7 tonight too. So we'll touch on all that quickly on the other side. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. Got Dave Morassutti with me. We're your hosts here at Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for that daily Leafs content. The Toronto Maple Leafs may be long gone and eliminated, but we're still here. Dave and I putting in that time, putting in those hours. Hopefully you reciprocate with the simple subscribe, like, comment down below. Let us know down below, by the way, is Jason Spezza a Hall of Famer? I think that's the question that I want people to answer in the comment section today. Is Jason Spezza a Hall of Famer? Also, put that in the show notes as well. It's kind of the question as part of the show notes too. All right. So we'll kind of put the Leafs to the side for now. Let's talk a little bit about Team Canada as they came back. You watched this game too, I'm assuming.
I did.
Yeah.
There weren't many things to watch. I mean, other than the Blue Jays.
It was actually a busy day of sports, actually, because you had Canada taking on Finland. You had Felix Auger-Aliassime in Roland Garros French Open taking on Nadal. That was an amazing match, by the way. And it rolled into the Blue Jays, which rolled into like the Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final in the NBA. And now here we are, finally, after all of that, recording a podcast. So it was an extremely busy day of sports. And you maybe even woke up and watched the bronze medal game. I did not. I was like, I'm just going to watch gold, watch Canada. But some people maybe wanted to watch U.S. and lose to Czechia. But Canada also lost to Finland. They were down 3-1 with a couple minutes to go and came back just like they did against Sweden. But this time it was Canada who took the penalty in overtime, and Canada who allowed the power play goal to Finland, and they go home with silver. Your thoughts, David, on the tournament for Canada?
That was a rough, I've seen Canada. It remind me a little bit, not completely, but a little bit of the World Juniors when they were in, I think, Saskatchewan. They were down against the States. Jordan Eberle scores those 2 goals to bring them back and tie it, only to lose in overtime.
Yeah,
that's the part that sucks, right? You make this second game in a row where you make this great comeback, only to lose in overtime. The penalty call, that was a chintzy one.
it was pretty soft.
Who was it that commented after? I actually have the comments in front of me.
It was also that penalty, and then when he fell, he also tripped Shabbat, and then that went uncalled. And it was
I feel like Pierre-Luc Dubois was pretty irate. I'm not irate, but he was pretty upset about that. We already
We're not gonna complain about officiating.
WHF officiating is different from any other officiating in hockey. Don't compare it to the NHL because it's totally different. But the unfortunate part for Canada is also that you lose your goalie, Chris
Yeah.
Jr. Injured. That was I was like, this is gonna be a tough one without your starter. I'll give give the backup a lot of credit because he was put in a very tough spot. Matt Tompkins did. I mean, he kept the team in the game, right? They were down 3-1. I know it's unfortunate, but then they needed to get that comeback. He was solid, and the overtime goal was a tough one. That those cross ice one timers are like the toughest things to stop.
Oh yeah.
I will give the crowd. That crowd was electric.
Well, it's their home crowd, and those Finns love their hockey, man.
That's a bucket list thing for me to just go watch one of those tournaments in like Finland, like where it'd be a great experience because they really do love. Like people always wonder what's with this. Like that's who the tournament's really for, right? It's for these, for those that are going to watch it. Like that was a packed crowd for obviously for the home country to win a gold medal, but that's what those tournaments are for. So if anybody wants to know, I'm sure a lot of people were like, I don't know if I'm going to watch it, but then you see Canada in a gold medal game, you're going to watch the game. You're Canadian. It's a rite of passage.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think I watched more than 4 seconds of like preliminary round robin play, and then I watched the game against Sweden. I watched the semifinal against Czechia, and then I watched tonight. So I really didn't care too much until it got to the playoffs round. So I'm sure a lot of people were kind of in that, especially because it's like right in the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and these games are early in the morning. So there was a couple of reasons for it, and I work during the times where these games are at. Now, I mean, I work in sports where I talk about hockey, but we weren't really covering much of it, to be quite honest with you, until it got to that point.
Not as much Leafs content either, unfortunately. The only Mikko Lehtinen, 2 assists in that gold medal game.
Yeah, shout out former Maple Leaf legend Mikko Lehtinen with a couple of apples for Finland in the gold medal win for his home nation. All right, let's quickly since we only had a couple more minutes here. Do you want to go? Let's start with tonight's game, Rangers Canes Game 7. So far, all home teams have won. They're going to Game 7. Each squad has won all 3 of their home games. Are you giving the edge to Carolina at home in Game 7 tonight? Where's your head at heading into this one?
I'm going to go with the team with the better goalie. That's where I'm going. I'm going all Team Igor on this one. I think Ranta has looked bad on the road. I know he's looked a lot better at home, but in the Game 7, in an elimination game, Igor Shesterkin has been almost unbeatable for the Rangers.
Yeah,
and I liked. You watched those goals in Game 6 that Ranta allowed? Like, those were brutal.
Yeah, they weren't great. He did not look good at all in that game.
I mean, the Hurricanes just did not look good at all in Game 6, but I also just think Shesterkin was just that good. Like, I want to see a Shesterkin-Vasilevsky Eastern Conference Final. I think we all deserve that.
I agree. Plus, I do have money on the Rangers, so I would like for them to go as far as possible. But I also I placed a wager long ago on Carolina. It's also won a cup, so it was fine. I literally found that out today.
You have no dog in the race right now, dude.
I was looking through the old, futures bets that I laid, and I was like, oh, I placed the futures on Carolina to win the Stanley Cup back in September. Okay. They're like plus 1,800. And I was like, yeah, they're a good squad. Why not? So I kind of have my bases covered, to be honest with you, when it comes to betting on that. But the game tonight in particular at Bet Online, the Rangers are the underdogs. So they're coming in as the dogs. I think we would expect, but plus 135 on the money line for the Rangers to win this game. Carolina minus 150. As the favorites on that one. Over under set at 5.5. I think if the Rangers win, I like the over. If you like Carolina, I like the under. That's pretty much how I think I'm going to bet this game. So if I like Carolina to win, I think I like the under bet more than I do Carolina, or you could potentially, if you would like to parlay those two, you could take Carolina in the under. I think I'm with you, though. I really think New York is the better squad. Well, they got the better goalie. And in a game 7, I'll take that guy to make more stops than Antti Ranta, who just got yanked. So we'll see. I'll be curious to see. I don't know if we've heard a new update on Freddie. He traveled with the team. I don't know if he'd be ready to go, but if he is ready to go, if he is ready to play tonight and he tells you, I'm good to go, do you think Rod Brindamore sticks Freddie in cold, or do you think that he would stick with Antti Ranta? I mean, outside of the one game this series, like he's been pretty good. He's got like he had a sub 2 goals against going into that game 6, like a 930 save percentage. So it's kind of a toss up. Like I don't know. I think I would roll with him and then maybe introduce Freddie if they can make it into the next series, just so that it's not so much pressure. And Freddie in game 7, not typically great. I'll tell you that. Not typically great.
That's just the worst situation you could. I know, like the Penguins is something similar to Tristan Jarry, right? Where they threw him in mainly because you're going to trust
against the Rangers.
Yeah.
Against the same Rangers.
Right. You're going to trust Tristan Jarry a little bit more than Louis Domingue. Spicy pork and broccoli. We'll never forget that one.
Not the best. Not the best.
Not the best. But I think with Freddie, yeah, that's just such a tough thing to put him in. And like Ranta has been good at home, right? You kind of maybe have to say, we know how good we can be at home. Let's just get the job done at home. Freddie likely tries to get in the next series if they do move on. But I think with Carolina, you're kind of stuck with Ranta for this game. And look, maybe if things don't go well, you pull him and then you say, Freddie, we have to go with you. Like that might be a conversation you have. But yeah, no, I don't think you try not to overthink it too much.
It may not even be an option. I'm not entirely sure. I just know that
he's been making the trips.
Yeah, like he traveled with the team, so I'm assuming it means he's close. Don't know if that means he's quite ready yet, but if that conversation or if that option kind of arises, I was like, how would you deal with that? But luckily, we're not Rod Brindamore, and we don't have to make that decision. No. The last note I'm going to make about this series, though, Tyler Mott, officially a UFA of interest for me for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Him and Mr. Kopp.
Yeah, I think either of those two. Now, different, like Tyler Mott, bottom 6 edition, Kopp, probably a top 6 edition. But yeah, those two guys definitely are winning me over. Wouldn't mind to see either of them in a Leafs jersey next year. So we'll see. But yeah, all right. Lastly, Avs beat the Blues with 5 seconds left in regulation, Dave. Darren Helm, old man Helmsy with the go-ahead goal.
Somebody's like, that old guy that used to play for Detroit? I'm like, yep.
Yeah. Talk about a gut feeling. Like, why the hell's Darren Helm on the ice with 5 seconds left in the game?
He's out there with McKinnon. I'm pretty sure, like, the top line was out there for, like, I don't know how that happened.
Like,
did he get lost in the shuffle and just got off on the bench? And
that's what I mean.
Like, how did he get? What's he doing out there? Get him back! No, he scores.
Worked, man. Nice shot that he placed. Went right past Billy Husso. Avs moving on to the third round for the first time in 20 years. And we got our McJesus versus Mac Jesus round 3 Western Conference final. Dude, I am so excited and jacked up about this matchup. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, I'm expecting big things from Mac Jesus in this one. Cale Makar.
Yeah.
Somebody was trying to pull, like, have we seen a series where, so much star power is on both ends? Like, well, I mean, we kind of have.
Toronto, Tampa had a lot of star power.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that if you're Colorado, you just got to be careful you don't get stuck with Edmonton's kind of run and gun. We're just going to play all offense, because that's kind of what they did against Calgary. It worked. Darcy Kemper gives me a little. I mean, look at what they did to Jacob Markstrom.
That's what I was about to say. I was like, I don't know, man. Like, Markstrom's a better goalie than Kemper. They made that guy look like he was me in net.
But I will say this. Edmonton's got to defend against Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, Gabriel Landeskog. Like that's a
Kadri.
now.
Don't diss my man Naz.
I was getting to him. Like,
No,
but
you
that's
weren't.
the
You were
thing.
done.
But no, but look at the list.
I
Even
know.
now, Kaji, Valier Nichushkin's a good player too for them. Like they got depth, and I don't like Calgary had Gaudreau, Kachuk, Lindholm, Mangiapane, but they did not have the depth that the Colorado Avalanche have. And Mike Smith is also in net for Edmonton, so that's a bit of a wild card there too. So, but this series is going to be like if you're someone who was not happy about having to stay up to watch those Western Conference, the Battle of Alberta games, just take a nap, guys. Take a nap. Watch these games because they're gonna be well worth it.
Well, I'm just happy because it seems like the last couple of years, it's like, oh, round one was awesome, and then kind of fizzled out round two. The conference finals were rarely actually any good or enticing, and then you get back into it for like a decent Stanley Cup final. This year's different. It seems like it's gotten better and better with each round. And like the Battle of Alberta was outstanding. And now you get McDavid versus McKinnon and potentially a Shesterkin versus Vasilevsky, the battle of the two Russian goaltenders. And even if you don't, like Carolina's a solid team. Like they're a real good team. I'd like to see them up against the Lightning. I think the Lightning eliminated them last year, did they not, in the second round?
I'm drawing a blank. Like last year,
Maybe not. Maybe it was the round. Maybe it was the year before. But I know they eliminated them at some point in the last couple of years on their way to a Stanley Cup run. So there'll be some bad blood there. They're going to want to try and book their ticket into the final too. So should be a really fun conference final, which we can really break it down a lot more on tomorrow's episode. So why don't we leave it there, and tomorrow we can kind of break down Avs Oilers a little bit more, and then we'll know what the Eastern Conference final matchup is tomorrow because Game 7 is tonight to determine that one. So that's to do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Leave a like, a comment on YouTube, subscribe. That would be fantastic. Really helps us out. And review it as well if you're listening on iTunes. That'd be much, much appreciated. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.